Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made a spring-themed Tyranid warrior. And the idea is, if you've seen my video with the winter-themed one, that I want to make a Tyranid themed after the 4 seasons. So now I've made one for winter, and this one is my spring one. So I started off using some barbed bracken from Games Workshop. They are made for like putting on your bases and stuff. And I thought they had some lovely details on them that would make them look like leaves I could glue onto my Tyranids. And as I've said in the winter video as well, I was inspired to do this series by looking at some videos by Midwinter Minis, where they had put on a whole bunch of cool stuff to the back of their Tyranids, and I thought that was so much fun, and I wanted to do the same, but I wanted to do it in my own way, and so I came up with the ideas of the 4 seasons. So as you can see here, I just glued the leaves onto the back of the Tyranid, and I tried to make it so that the smaller ones were at the front and then the bigger ones in the middle, just so that it would sort of match the size of the armor scales I was attaching them to. Then I sprayed it all white. As you can see, I used the White Scars primer from Citadel, and then I gave most of it a wash, as you can see here, using Croxagore Scales, which is a contrast paint. I wanted the skin of the Tyranid to have a different tone, and so I painted that using the Volupus Pink contrast paint. I'm going to do a sort of slap chop-ish thing where I give it all a quick dry brushing using white, and then put on the sort of actual real colors I want the Tyranid to have afterwards. And doing the undercoating in different colors gives them just different qualities and a little bit of a different tone and hue to work off, instead of just doing it all on black as you usually would see. If you do slap chop, then you would usually just do it like you have a black undercoat, and then you do a white dry brushing, and then you use the speed paints or the contrast paints or whatever else on top of that. But I think it's a little bit more fun to work with different sort of undertones instead of just black, also because black is just very desaturating, and I don't want this to be a desaturated color scheme at all, because this is after all themed for spring. For the leaves and the armor panels, I used Scorpion Green, Striking Scorpion Green, which is also a contrast paint, and it's one of those very bright contrast paints that I find can be a little bit difficult sometimes to find a real actual use for, but I thought for this particular project it was perfect. Then for the skin, I chose to go with Aethermatic Blue, which is also a contrast paint, and I had imagined that it would show up as a more of a bright turquoise color, and it actually ended up looking just a little bit more sort of gray and sickly than I had in mind. But I thought, this was an experiment. I haven't done this before, so I just went with it and thought I would just see where it would end up taking me. This is, after all, something I'm doing for fun, not something I'm doing for display or for competition or even for painting an entire army. This is just a one-off thing, so it doesn't matter if it turns out to be not exactly the way I had imagined. I then painted the claws and the gun, as you can see here, using Volupus Pink again, but then over the Croxagore Scales, which helps bring out some of the shadows a little bit more than if I had painted it just on top of the Volupus Pink alone. For the first layer of highlights on the green parts of the model, I used Quantum Green, which is a fluorescent paint from Huge Miniatures. And of course, if you've been following this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of the fluorescent paints from Huge Miniatures, and I use them on, well, I think more or less every single model I paint. I also used it here, as you can see, on the leaves. I wanted the leaves and the armor plates to be the exact same colors, so that it would look more or less like the leaves just sort of believably grow out of the armor. I don't know, it looks really silly. He looks very, very silly with this, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. The next layer of highlights were done using Starfire Yellow, which is also a fluorescent paint from Huge Miniatures, and it's sort of a very cold yellowish green color that I really like. For highlighting this skin, I mixed up 2 colors also from Huge Miniatures, and that was Quantum Green and Blaster Blue, and then I mixed in a whole bunch of white, so it ended up as a very, very pale turquoise color, and you almost can't see it here on the video, but it is actually a highlight, and it helps brighten it up, but at the same time makes the model look quite cold. And I thought that was appropriate because this is, after all, a model that I'm going to be theming like it's for spring. And at least where I'm from Denmark, so Scandinavia, spring tends to be quite a cold time of year. It's like very hopeful and very bright green, and things are lovely, but at the same time you can still get snow pretty late in the spring. So I thought it would be appropriate that the model still looked a little bit cold. For the final layer of highlight on the skin, I also used the Starfire Yellow, both because I thought it would look cool and also to tie it into the leaves on the back. I then decided to do a final layer of highlights on the green parts of the armor and the leaves, because I thought that it looked just a tiny touch too cold with all the neon yellow added to the skin as well. And so I went over just some of the edges using Flash Gitch Yellow, which is a color from Citadel, which is just sort of an ordinary warm yellow color, just to add a little bit of warmth to the overall look of the model. Then I grabbed again my Volupus Pink, the contrast paint, and I redid some of the shadows. I thought that some of them had gotten lost. Perhaps I was a little bit heavy-handed when I did the dry brushing. It was actually quite difficult to dry brush this and get a decent result because there are so many fiddly bits with the leaves sticking out of it. So I decided to just retrace some of the shadows to make sure that there was still a little bit of visual depth to the model. Then for highlighting the pink claws, I chose to go with an orange, which is called Laser Orange. I thought that would look fun instead of just highlighting it with pink, which was my original idea, which is why I, painted them pink in the first place. But I mean, pink and orange go well together anyway, so I didn't think it would be too much of an issue. And lastly, I highlighted the orange claws again using the Starfire Yellow, adding both a really nice touch of highlighting that really makes the orange pop, but at the same time also ties it into the rest of the color scheme. A lot of my paint jobs can be slightly busy. I use a lot of bright colors and I use a lot of different colors on a single model. And so if I can do something that'll help stuff just look slightly more cohesive, I'll do that, for instance, by using the same highlighting color, even if it's on different colors. Just again, it helps tie everything together just that little bit more. Then for highlighting the gun, I chose to go with pink because, I mean, every model could do with a touch of pink, right? And so the colors I chose for that was first Pulse Wave Pink and then Cyber Pink. Both of them are from Huge Miniatures. And for the final layer of highlights on the pink, I chose to mix a bit of the Cyber Pink with some white and then just do some slight touch-ups here and there. I try to be a little bit careful with it because if you go overboard, you end up with something that looks more like it's from My Little Pony than anything else. Which is, I mean, if you're going for that look, that's totally cool, but that's not exactly what I wanted here. Then I decided I needed to add just a little bit more to the model. I wanted to have some pink flowers or something coming out of the back. And I really tried to think of what I could use. And then it dawned on me I had some dried seed pods from a birch tree out in my garden. And it has a really nice shape. Well, of course, it's an organic shape. And so I painted that pink using the exact same method as I used for highlighting the gun. And then I tried attaching that to the back, as you can see here, where you also have the leaves. It was very, very fiddly. And these seed pods, they're very brittle and dry, so they are fragile. But in the end, I succeeded in attaching them. I think it looks even more silly now than it did before. But in my book, that is only a good thing. And I don't know, there is something about this that really makes me happy. It just looks weird, which I think is fitting for a Tyranid. And it also looks, like something I could believe actually has something to do with spring. So at least it succeeded in that. I'm not quite sure about the skin. As I said, I had imagined that I would do something that would end up looking bright turquoise, and then it ended up looking like this. So I'm not sure. I actually got the look I was initially going for, but I just went with it, and I think that can be part of the creative process, which is always fun to go with. And of course, as I used a lot of fluorescent paints, as you can see here, it will glow under a UV light, which is always delightful. So before I end this video, I would like to take the opportunity to thank my Patreons who support me on Patreon. So thank you so much to Thomas Madsen, Scott Broadway, Andrew Correa, Anthony Paul Castro, Queen's Wolf, JJ Walt, Gwenna L, Mola Mola, TJ Kubiak, Mando Project, Starcon85, S. Beer, Echinocicus, Firelord21, and Elliot Philby. If you also want to support this channel on Patreon, you can do so by following the link that I will leave in the description. Also remember, you can always follow me as Dyson Demons over on Twitter and Instagram if you want to stay up to date on my painting projects. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!